Let's smash everything that Emacs can do into this, a presentation controller. We're looking at a complete re-implementation of Dslide. It shares only a little bit of the code, but a lot of the ideas, so thanks Takaaki-san. We're going to run through the features, discuss its intended role within the ecosystem, take a look at the design of the configuration, and finish up by doing a little bit of customization. First among features that I wanted was an architecture that would support doing configuration per slide, making slightly different points slightly different ways. Another highly desirable feature was to display images full frame, because a sequence of images is just a great fallback for tools that display information graphically. After building in this extensibility and the ability to consume the org data in different ways, it became really obvious, why not just make it run the org Babel blocks? If we connect the Babel blocks to our 2-button presentation interface, we can integrate every other buffer within Emacs and do it from the org document. To save time writing cleanup code after the presentation and to save users from having to clean up all their little presentation tweaks, I went ahead and used an indirect buffer. By calling clone indirect buffer, I can get the same buffer contents but with an independent ELIS state. So when we kill that buffer when we're done, we're just taken back to the base buffer and it doesn't have any of those modifications present. As a consequence, you can see the source for the base buffer while doing the presentation, and I can even make them follow along so the window point is updated whenever you move through the slides. And for easier navigation at a higher level, we have a contents view where you can reuse the same interface. The forwards and backwards for the slides goes through the headings, and then you can go to that slide. Because you might use a hidden cursor during presentation, I went ahead and made the selection as visible as possible. Because the architecture is extensible, and because most of the one-off tricks you want to do can be done directly within org Babel, this thing is perfect for tech demos. If you've got a Friday feature demonstration, you've already got all your programming tools within Emacs, just do it within Emacs. If you have regular informal meetings, and you want to reuse the org docs you've already got ready, and you want to take notes during the meeting, this is the tool. If you've got a new package and you want to make a tutorial, don't tell me what the code does, show me what the code does. The reason I decided to focus on this package went well beyond the value that I expected to get out of it. More effective tools of communication have a tendency to get in front of people. They are seen, and they have a tendency to catalyze things like leadership and organization. And a tool that's going to deliver a quick payoff from learning a little bit of Babel scripting is going to result in a more proficient kind of Emacs user. And obviously tools of more effective Emacs education tend to bring more people in and make them more successful faster. All of these things pay dividends, and that made it a great opportunity to connect a message and to create the concrete reality of driving value into our ecosystem. And we want this value flowing into the ecosystem because we want to have nice things. We want Emacs to be excellent 40 years from now. And we don't want to wait 13 years for a package maintainer to finally get annoyed enough to volunteer a solution to problems that are getting harder and harder. So we need better ways to drive development into the things that are going to give us value. But the tools that are out there are very much either first-generation solutions or they weren't designed for the problem at all. Something like GitHub Sponsors was never intended to be innovative. It was simply thrown out there to see if it would be successful on the strength of the platform that it was attached to. But Positron is developing dedicated tools that were intentionally designed to solve these forever problems of open source and open innovation. We're going to deliver this solution to Emacs first, somewhere where we're already creating value and we can deliver value directly. This is all part of a way to bootstrap, to use something that's merely sufficient to expedite or enable obtaining what we actually want. So when I say, go become a GitHub sponsor, don't do it because this is the ideal solution. Do it because it's a terrible solution, and with your help, we're going to replace it faster. So what does configuring an org doc look like? For changing the basic display behavior of headlines, we're going to use the properties in the property drawer. Each slide is going to unpack this configuration into some action objects. These action objects handle the actual calls to forwards and backwards. Because one of the common use cases is to change one behavior without changing the other behaviors, I divided it into 3 properties. There is an action for the slide, an action for the child, and then we can run some actions within this section. That's all the stuff that's between the heading and the children. Each of these action names is actually a class, and most of these classes support a couple of options. To set them, you have these plist style key value pairs, and those are passed into the constructor, setting the value on that object. For connecting these Babel blocks into our 2-button interface, we're going to label them with keywords. Set the value of this keyword to the methods of our 2-button interface that this block implements. Our 2-button interface basically has 5 methods. The first are pretty obvious, step forward and step backward. Because I might want to do some setup, I needed a init method, and because I need to do setup going in reverse, I need an end method. And then because I need to clean up, I have a final method. So init is like initialize, end is like we're going to start at the end, we're going to initialize in reverse, and then final means finalize, we're going to clean up. For convenience, step both is supported, and it'll run going forwards or backwards. You can add multiple methods to a block, and this will improve your code reuse because lots of times initializing is just not that different going forwards and backwards. Integrating Babel blocks this way is a great solution if you have a one-off use case or you just want to do something for that one presentation. If you want to do something that's a little bit more repeatable, you probably want to go ahead and extend one of these action classes. Before we do that, quick primer on EIEIO. This is an eLisp implementation of the Common Lisp Object System. If you've done object-oriented programming before, everything is very recognizable. Among other things, the most likely place that you already use it is when you're using transient menus inside of Magic. What motivated using EIEIO here is that we have lots of little things that have their own little state and they're implementing a common interface, but we're letting them handle the implementation details. It also makes it relatively easy to specialize these little things because you just replace the method that you're interested in. For a concrete example, let's go ahead and make a custom action. We want our action to step through all of the paragraphs that are in the section. That's the part of the contents that's between the headline and the children. The closest class to something like that just reveals items one by one. The first thing we do is declare the class, and we're going to inherit from the same base classes. Let's change the color of each paragraph as we step through them. We can do this with overlays, and we want to store these overlays so that when the slide's done, we can delete those overlays. In our step forward method, we're going to just create an overlay, and then we'll add a color, and then in our step backwards method, we just delete the overlays. To clean up after ourselves, we'll have a final method that just deletes the overlays that are still around. If you're interested in hacking with org mode data, I would highly recommend taking a look at the code where I wrapped up this scanning forwards and backwards for elements within the section. Let's summarize the EIEIO functions that we needed to use to write this class. We had a class definition using CLDef class. It basically just has the superclasses and then a list of the slot declarations. We used CLDef method to override the methods we needed, and we used these qualified arguments in the argument list. This specifies the type, and that's used by the clause parts of EIEIO to match up the method to how we're calling it. That's how it does the dynamic dispatch. One very, very important point is that I use this after specifier that is going to add to the method behavior, not completely replace it. If you forget to add this, I can assure you there will be a bug. There's one thing I want to caution you about when you're doing your configurations with this package. Normally, you would see the MS mode hook, and whatever kinds of customizations you want to put into your presentation, you would just add to that hook. However, that hook is going to run in the base buffer in this case. And so when we have our indirect buffer, it'll have the cloned state, you'll have your changes, but then after you kill the presentation, the changes are going to stick around because the hook doesn't run in every single buffer necessarily, and so you can end up with weird inconsistencies between your global and local minor modes where they don't seem like they're turning off when they should. The very simple solution is to use the MS start hook. That explicitly only runs in the indirect buffer. The other hooks you might want to look at are the MS narrow hook. That runs anytime that the restriction state is changed due to a step forward or step backwards. And the other hook is the MS after last slide hook. So this is how you implement your what am I going to do when the presentation's finished. To keep this package small, I decided to make it focused on the structure of presentation and our 2-button interface. So other features I put into a package called Master of Ceremonies. Master of Ceremonies is generic for any kind of presentation package, but it includes two things that I think you'll definitely want to take a look at. One of them is MC hide markup mode, and that's going to hide these property drawers and keywords, and that'll make your presentation look clean. The second feature that's a lot of fun is MC Focus. MC Focus allows you to take any region of text and go ahead and make it full screen. It can save the highlighted region into an expression so that you can replay it without having the same buffer open, and it can also take screenshots. Master of Ceremonies is even newer than this package, so it has a little bit more rough edges, but it does have some things that could be really useful, so I wanted to put it out there. If you know what you're doing and you want to run the code right now, just head over to Positron's GitHub. You can follow the instructions, install the package, and then check out inside the test folder, there's a file called demo.org. That is a presentation that I was using for development, so it contains most of the features, and you can get a feel for running these presentations on your own. As far as when I'll get these published on package archives, they're almost ready to go up on Melpa, and then I'm going to try to put macro slides into the non-GNU ELPA to make it a little bit more available, and I've heard that they do some more reviews, so I want to see what kind of quality I can get out of going through that process. One thing I have been thinking about is changing the package prefix. So right now I'm using MS, but that's a shorthand, and so it's not really that obvious when you see it in the code and when you see it in the org documents. So I might want to go with something like SlideMax that's still really short, it's going to keep the symbols clean, but it's really obvious when you see it in code or in a presentation. So I don't know, weigh in the comments, upvote some things, and we'll figure it out. I got a lot more stuff coming up, so if you're new, remember to like and subscribe, and this was a lot of work, so buy me a hamburger.
See you next time.